Ele quer nos matar, ele quer nos matar. Esse é o grito desesperado que se ouve nas ruas de Camarões. O tempo das piadas acabou.
Welcome to One Africa News, your premier source for news and current affairs from across the continent. We're glad you're here. If you're new to our channel, please subscribe, like, and turn on notification to stay up to date with the latest news and analysis. Your support helps us reach more people. Today on One Africa News, a continent watches closely as tremors shake Cameroon. After more than 4 decades in power, President Paul Biya, one of the world's longest ruling leaders, now faces perhaps his most serious threat yet, an attempted military coup. What went wrong in a country once considered a pillar of Central African stability? This is One Africa Reports. Stay with us.
I think this is a Cameroonian press, Mr. President.
Our nation is bilingual, English and French, and is therefore fertile ground for American investors. Our two governments have signed an agreement on the reciprocal protection of investments, which will certainly encourage them. Assistance from the American government has been of great help to us, particularly in the fields of agriculture, education, and health. We do appreciate the contribution of the United States to our social life and hope that the number of cultural exchange programs will increase. Since our foreign policy is based on international cooperation, we count very much on the United States. Our relations are characterized by mutual friendship. I hope that the United States will help defend our ideals of peace and freedom, which are often threatened in Africa. Your nation and President have our total confidence. We congratulate President Reagan on his meeting in Geneva with Mr. Gorbachev. Thank you for your attention.
Paul Biya first rose to power in 1982, succeeding Amadou Ahidjo. At the time, he was seen as a quiet technocrat, a stabilizing hand, but that image would evolve and harden over the decades. Now 91 years old, Biya has ruled for 42 years, often from abroad. Reports claim he spends up to 200 days a year in Switzerland, while Cameroonians back home face power outages, unemployment, and an economy heavily reliant on oil and timber exports. Though hailed early on for stability, Biya's reign has been marked by brutal suppression of dissent and neglect of democratic reforms. The most glaring crisis? The unresolved Anglophone conflict.
He wants to kill us. He wants to kill us. This is the desperate cry heard on the streets of Cameroon. The time for jokes is over. The silence that marked the last few years has given way to a growing revolt. A tired, frustrated people are breaking out of fear. Today, Cameroon is experiencing one of the most tense moments in its recent history. In cities such as Douala and Yaoundé, Marua and Bafoussam, hundreds of citizens, young and old, are taking to the streets to openly protest against President Paul Biya's regime. They face repression and threats, but they still speak out. They want to be heard. The situation in the country is critical. There is a lack of basic services. The population lives with power outages and a lack of drinking water every day. Roads are in terrible condition, garbage piles up in overcrowded hospitals. The reality in Cameroon is one of abandonment, and at the center of this crisis is one name, Paul Biya. President since 1982, he has been in power for 42 years. And despite his advanced age, 92, there are rumors that he intends to run again. This has caused outrage among a large part of the population, especially among the youngest, who have never known another president in their lives. In a country with more than 27 million inhabitants, a large part of the population was born and raised under the same government. An entire generation has lived under unfulfilled promises, under a political system marked by stagnation, growing unemployment and institutionalized corruption. Meanwhile, a small political group remains in power. A clan that controls the institutions, manipulates electoral processes and silences opposing voices. Critics point out that the regime is sustained by force, propaganda and fear, but something is changing. Fear is changing sides, dissatisfaction is spreading through the streets. Universities and social networks, the Cameroonian diaspora is also mobilizing. Cameroonians in New York, Washington, Paris and even Canada have been organizing demonstrations and using the internet to denounce the abuses committed by the regime. Political figures such as Cabral Libby, Maurice Kamto, and the activists of the Anti-Sardine Brigade have become symbols of this opposition. They speak out openly against the system, demanding change and denouncing the attempt to perpetuate power. The images that are circulating show entire neighborhoods without infrastructure, markets without basic products and families struggling to get medical care. Prices have risen, public services have collapsed and the patience of the Cameroonian people seems to have run out. The protests we are seeing today go beyond simple demonstrations. They represent a generation that refuses to accept immobility. A generation that says no to repression, to the monopoly of power and to the humiliation of an entire people. The protesters are asking for something simple: change. They want a different future. They want to see new leaders. They want a government that truly represents the interests of the population and is capable of facing the challenges of the country. Cameroon is not a private property, it is not a kingdom, and Paul Biya is not eternal. This is the feeling that moves thousands of people today. It is the cry that echoes in the streets and on social networks. It is the awakening of a population that refuses to remain silent. The wind of change is blowing strong and, as many have already said, no one will be able to stop it. The situation in Cameroon, although alarming, is far from being an isolated case on the African continent. Paul Biya is undoubtedly one of the most symbolic faces of this phenomenon. Of leaders who refuse to leave power, even in the face of the collapse of their countries and the exhaustion of their peoples. But he is not alone. Other African presidents follow the same path. Growing old in presidential palaces, while the streets cry out for renewal. Teodoro Obiang Nguema Basagot of Equatorial Guinea is the longest-serving head of state in the world today. He has been in power since 1979, totaling 45 years in office. Today, at 82 years old, he keeps the country under strong authoritarian control, with very little room for opposition or freedom of the press. In neighboring Uganda, Yoweri Museveni has ruled since 1986. That's 38 years of concentrated power in his hands. At 79, Museveni changed the constitution to remove the age limit for presidential candidates, in a clear maneuver to remain in office indefinitely. Denis Sassou Nguesso of the Republic. According to international observers, in Eritrea, Isaias has ruled since the country's independence in 1993. At 78 years old, he has never held presidential elections. The country lives under a highly closed regime, where repression is intense and young people are forced to live under a system of almost permanent military conscription. What all these leaders have in common is more than time in office. They are part of a generation of rulers who associate the given with their own figure, seeing power not as a service, but as a lifelong throne. Meanwhile, millions of Africans live without real prospects for change. The youth, who represent more than 60% of the continent's population, find themselves trapped between a lack of opportunities and the cycle of authoritarian regimes. Many of these young people have never participated in a free and fair election. They have never known democratic change, or a government truly committed to the common good. These presidents are aging in office, but the continent remains young, and this contradiction is becoming unsustainable. In Cameroon, this rupture has already begun. But the question that echoes from Kampala, from Brazzaville to Malabo.
Since 2016, Cameroon has been locked in a low-intensity civil war between separatists in the English-speaking regions and the central government. Thousands have died. Millions have been displaced. "We don't feel like part of Cameroon anymore," says a youth leader from Bamenda. "Biya abandoned us." Cameroon's economy, despite its rich natural resources, is stagnant. Over 38% of the population lives in poverty, and youth unemployment has reached crisis levels. Critics argue that decades of corruption, nepotism, and lack of industrial reform have drained Cameroon's potential. Meanwhile, top political elites remain untouched, shielded by Biya's decades-long patronage network. Then came the coup attempt. Early last week, military officers reportedly launched a coordinated attempt to seize key government buildings in Yaoundé. Explosions and gunfire rang out near the defense ministry and state broadcaster. The government quickly declared that the coup had failed, with several officers arrested. But for many Cameroonians, it was a loud warning bell. The Biya era may finally be collapsing under its own weight. So why now? Analysts point to a mix of succession uncertainty, military fatigue, and public rage. President Biya has not publicly named a successor. His son, Frank Biya, is rumored to be groomed for power. But this has angered many military and political elites who feel sidelined. This isn't just about seizing power, says a regional analyst. It's about a generation fed up with autocracy, demanding a future they can shape. The African Union swiftly condemned the coup attempt, as did ECOWAS and France, Cameroon's former colonial power. But behind closed doors, many are asking, what happens if Biya suddenly falls? Cameroon's military is fragmented, the opposition is divided, and the Anglophone regions remain on the brink of secession. As Africa's second longest-serving leader clings to power, the people of Cameroon are left to wonder, is this the end of an era, or just the beginning of another cycle? One thing is certain, Cameroon's future will no longer be shaped by silence. The youth are restless, the military is watching, and the world is listening. From Yaoundé to Buea, from Douala to Geneva, the winds of change are blowing. Will Cameroon rise, or will it fall deeper into uncertainty? This has been One Africa News Reports. Stay informed, stay awake, stay African. Disclaimer: the content of this video is based on credible publicly available information and is intended for educational, analytical, and informational purposes only. One Africa News does not promote hate, violence, misinformation, or political unrest. Our goal is to deliver thoughtful insights, highlight local voices, and encourage informed conversations throughout Africa. Thank you for watching One Africa News. Kindly subscribe and stay up to date with our latest news updates. Like, comment, and share our videos with your content with your friends and family.